Ordering the
I'm not
court.
sure if both will work. Let's set this up. I'm not sure if it'll work. Okay, ladies, good evening. We are ready to begin. Parshas Toldos. This week's Parsha, we of course learn about the birth of Yaakov and Esav. And we're going to study a talk of the Rebbe. It's printed in the Kutei Sichos, volume 15, the first Sich of Parshas Toldos. And it deals with a very fundamental question that I'm sure many of you, as myself, have had when we read through the Parsha every single year. And that is, one of the most major matters of importance when a couple gets married is that they pray to Hashem, and there's so many things we do throughout our entire marriage and child rearing, that the child should come out Kaddish, Vitar, holy and pure, and go on the path of the Torah mitzvahs. How on earth did one of our patriarchs, Yitzchak Avinu, one of the highest of the high, of the tzaddikim in the line of the Jewish people, have a son called Esav? I mean, 50-50. It wasn't like, you got a worm out of, you had 10 kids and he had one worm in the package. This was 50-50. He had two children. One was Esav, one was Yaakov. Same similar question is regarding Avraham Avinu. How did he have Yishmael? What happened that their kids went off? Did they not have good education? Was there something, was Avram not, was there something wrong in the chinuch of Esav and of Yishmael that they went off the derech, as we say? Or was there something pre-planned and pre-hidden within their destiny that was specified to Avram's care and specified to Esav's care, and that's why to Yitzchak's care, and that's why they were given these what we can call special needs children, troubled children. So while the Rebbe in the Sikha doesn't really focus on the idea of parents having children that go off, but it does discuss it directly regarding Yitzchak and Esav, and I think there's a lot of lessons that we can learn out of this whole story. So let's begin as we usually do. We're going to begin with the story in this week's Parsha as it is revealed within the different midrashim. Yitzchak gets married b'shot tov u'mutzlachas at age 40 in the land of Canaan to his bashert Rivka at the age of 3. 10 years, she's prior to the age of being able to have children, right, at 3 years old, so they had to wait 10 years. When she turned 12, 13 years old, that's when her body was physically able to now be able to have children like all the other women of the world. And they tried having kids. 10 more years passed, still no children. He is now age 60, and Rivka is now age 23, and they're getting worried. They're getting very worried because, as we know, the halacha is that 10 years with no children, the husband has to get himself either another wife or get divorced. Now, Yitzchak couldn't marry another wife. He couldn't take a shivcha like his father because he was a karban. He was Kaddish La Hashem. So there was only one choice. It was either Rivka has a child or they have to divorce. So you can marry someone else who's able to have children. So they both went off on their ways and davened to Hashem so that she merit a child. Sefer Yashar writes the nusach of the prayer. It says that Yitzchak went in his side and said the following: Hashem Elikei Hashemayim, God, the God of the heavens and the earth, Asher tucha v'chastcha molekol haaretz, in which your goodness and kindness filled all of the earth. Atar shelakachtas avim beis aviv, you took my father out of his father's home. Eretz maladatai, and you took him out from his birthplace. V'vio la'aretz hazeh, you brought him to this land, to Israel. V'ataymer loy, and you said to him, l'chol zaracha etenes haaretz. Yitzchak is saying to God, you said to my father Avraham that he, Avraham, and his descendants will be given the land. Furthermore, you guaranteed and promised that his descendants will be as many as the stars of the heavens, and as many as kechol hayam, as the sand of the sea. Please make true of your words that you promised my father. As you are God, master of the world, you have the ability to give people children, to allow people to procreate, as you have promised us. Okay, that was the prayer that he said. And as you know, the pasuk says, Then Avram Hashem heard this prayer, and Rivka became pregnant. In the 7th month, in the 7th month of her pregnancy, there's an earthquake going on inside. There's an earthquake going on inside of her womb. The children are running around like it's a playground. She was very much pained, to the point that she was repulsed by the pregnancy. She didn't want the pregnancy anymore. She walked over, she asked all the other women, it's all of her friends, have you ever experienced such horrible pains and gravitational pulls in all the different directions during your pregnancy? Which I am experiencing? They said, no, we don't know what you're talking about. She said to them, why did God pick me to go through this trouble? Why am I unique in the suffering over all the other women of the world? She went to the land of Meriah, which usually refers to Yerushalayim, Hashem, to speak to God. So as we know, she went to Shem and Aver, and she asked them what's going on inside of her. But Tishel Gamas Avraham, she also went and asked her father-in-law, Avram Avinu, Bavakesh V'Lidush Hashem, to find out from God what's happening. And they all replied to her the same thing. Shem and Aver, Avram Avinu, Shnei Yilad Bevitnech, you have 2 children in your stomach, in your womb. And 2 great nations will descend from them, and they will both be always in competition with each other, and the older will in the end serve the younger. So she gave birth. There were twins. As we know, this is all from the pasuk. The first one, which was Esav, came out all red, and that's why he was called Esav, which represents that he was already complete, like Esav Haaretz. And then, while in the Sukkim, it doesn't really tell us much about the life of Esav. It just says that he was a man of the field who knew how to hunt. In the Medrash, we find a little more details about the life and times of Esav and why we give him that surname, Harasha. Avram Avinu passes away about 14 years later. They were born when Avram Avinu was 61 years old. Avram Avinu passed away at 175, so about when they were 14 years old, or in their 14th year, Avram passed away. So Esav, at that day, the day of the passing, went out to the field like he would usually do to go hunt, and it happened to be that that was a day that Nimrod, the king of Bavel, was doing an expedition, a hunting expedition, together with all of his warriors. Medrash says something interesting. Nimrod had an inner and secret jealousy and anger and hatred towards Esav throughout all the days. He was only 14 years old, this little Esav. For some reason he had an inner jealousy. I guess he knew about the power of Esav, spiritual power. That day that Avram Avinu passed away, Esav goes on his expedition, and while he's in this expedition, he sees Nimrod together with 2 of his men, meaning they separated from the whole entourage of the hunters, and they were somewhere else. And Esav decided to ambush him, and as he did so, he ambushed Nimrod, and as soon as they came, he jumped out of his hiding area, and he killed all 3 of them, Nimrod and his 2 bodyguards, I guess you can call them. And of course, when the men heard the screams, they heard what happened, they came running. They came running and they went ahead and they were chasing after Esav. Esav ran home, but before he ran home, he managed to grab the Ksainis Pasan, that known beggar that Nimrod had gotten from Adam Arishan, which was able to attract animals and protect him and be able to basically be the star player in hunting. And he took it home to his mother, to Rivka, and he hid it in his home. And he was very afraid, and that's what Sefer Yosha says. He went over to Yaakov and says, "Please give me these lentils lest I die. I feel I'm going to die." He thought he was going to die because the people, the army of the expedition that went on the expedition with Nimrod were going to take revenge and attack him. So this was his first year of his bar mitzvah. He already committed a few murders, stealing. Now Nimrod was not the best guy in the world. He wasn't the nicest guy. So it's not like that goes back. That goes down so bad. But nonetheless, we already see that he has the intuition to kill. And as the Medrash says, that the idea of him coming out red represents blood and represents the idea of murder. The Sifsei Kain al Torah explains that the reason why that the two children, the two sons, were wrestling or fighting inside of her womb is because not only did they want to, each one was trying to kill the other, but furthermore, Samuel, the Malach, which is the Malach of Esav, wanted to kill Yaakov. He was trying to kill Yaakov inside the womb. And the Sifsei Kain says like this: Amad Michal Kanegde Beis Shah. Michal, which is the Malach of Chesed, which represents also Yaakov Avinu, got up and he threatened Lisreif Samuel, to burn Samuel, meaning to kill Samuel if he does anything to Yaakov. And therefore they made a Bezdin and Hashem Paskin, but they didn't connect them Hazila Esav and Mabel Yaakov. In the womb already, it was decreed that Yaakov would receive the next world, while Esav would receive this world, and this is already all before they were born. We then know how the psukim continue, and the midrashim of the choice of wife or wives, I should say, in plural, that Esav chose for himself weren't the most virtuous women. They were women who served idolatry. They served idolatry within the home of Yitzchak. Sarah was able to smell the ketores that they would offer to idolatry. And basically, Esav, as we see, was a bloodthirsty individual who had some terrible character flaws, both with women, with murder. He was out of control. And this builds up to our question that we began with. So how did he come out of him? How did he come out of them? How do these two most righteous parents, which we can all wish that we can be as good of parents spiritually and in righteousness as Yitzchak and Rivka, how do they have a child like Esav, which I don't believe we wish on anybody? How does that happen? And as we already read through the different midrashim, this wasn't that due to a lack of proper education. He went to yeshiva and he got turned off. He got some traumatic event happened to him and he decided to go off. It wasn't one of those stories that happened today. This was a story that happened in the womb before they were born. This was purely not the blame of the system. Today we blame a lot of people when kids go off. The school blames the parents blame the school, everyone blames the system. There's blame to go around everywhere. This was as it's clear from the Midrashim, that this was nothing to do with what happened after they were born. Already in birth, already in the womb, Esav was a born Rasha. How does such a thing happen? How does Hashem create a born Rasha from a tzaddik? In the Sikha, the Rebbe strengthens this question a little more.
Excuse me? As far as I know, it says that tzaddik in Russia is not decided by Tzidus God. Only
Even a stronger question. If so, then how can we say that Esav already in the tummy was running towards the church? You're adding, very good. You're adding to our question. It says in Chazal, in Maseches Nida, that when a child is 40 days within conception, everything's decided. It's already written. How much money he'll make, what house he's going to have, everything's, who's going to be his wife, everything's written. But not if he'll be a tzaddik in the Rasha. And here we see, defying that Maimer Chazal, Yitzchak Avinu merits a child who is born already with some very serious character flaws. What child beats his mother's womb to go into a church? Right? What child tries to kill his twin brother inside the womb? How does this happen? The Rebbe strengthens the question based on a peculiar medrash in Medrash Rabbah of this week's parsha. The medrash says like this. The pasuk, first verse in this parsha begins, Ve'ela Toldos Yitzchak. These are the children of Yitzchak. And the medrash asks a simple question. Why do you say Ve'ela? Just say Ela. And these are. What do you mean and? If I started a sentence with an and, it would be, in most cases, grammatically incorrect. How, if you start a chapter with the word and, right? I don't think you can do that grammatically. What does it mean, Ve'ela Toldos Yitzchak? And. Just say Ela. It doesn't add anything. So obviously the Vav is coming to tell us something. It's coming to relate to us something that is more than just what's apparent in the verse. And the Medrash says like this. Ve'ela Moisef ala Rishayim. It's coming to connect these children of Yitzchak to some previously discussed children. Meaning that it's all a sequel of what was already discussed in the previous parsha and the parshas before that we learned about Yishmael, but in the last week's parsha, in Parshas Chayesara, it concluded Ve'ela Toldos Yishmael, with the children and descendants of Yishmael. It went through the 12 princes that came out of Yishmael. So these are the children of Yitzchak. Those are the children of Yishmael, and meaning Avram Yishmael, and these are the children of Yitzchak. Okay. Umi Haya, and the Medrash continues. Who then are the children of Yitzchak that the pasuk says Ve'ela Toldos Yitzchak? So of course all of us would say, well, the pasuk says, right? The Ve'ela Toldos Yitzchak, it says that it's Yaakov and Esav. However, says the Medrash, Ze Esav ubanav shoy b'nai shel Yitzchak. It's specifically Esav and Esav's descendants, as they are the sons of Yitzchak. So this Medrash is in essence saying, I understand it says in the pasuk that Yitzchak gave birth to two sons, Yaakov and Esav. However, the Vav is teaching us that this is a continuation of the lineage, or the type of lineage, listed in the previous parsha, which was of Avram and Yishmael. Just like Avraham had Yishmael, so to Yitzchak had a son which went off the derech, a son which wasn't a good child, whose name is Esav. And this is the main child of Yitzchak. Tremendously peculiar medrash. If you want to connect and say that the Torah here is listing the bad children of both Avram and Yitzchak, and therefore it says Vav, okay, I can understand that explanation if the medrash would say that. But to add that punch in the end, that by the way, this, if you want to know who was Yitzchak's children, not Yaakov. His main child was Esav. That was his child. How does that happen? What does that mean? How was Esav more Yitzchak's child than Yaakov was? So that begins explaining a little bit of a difference between Esav and Yishmael. And how we see that there was a special connection, and we see in Chazal that there was a special connection between Yitzchak and Esav, much more than Yishmael and Abraham. So it says like this. We all know that Yishmael, it's brought down in Chazal, and it's written, we read it in Rashi of Parshas Vayera, that in the end of the day Yishmael did tshuva. Avram had an effect on Yishmael, and Yishmael did tshuva. He came to the funeral, he allowed Yitzchak to go first, says that Yishmael did tshuva by his passing. However, Esav never did tshuva. Esav passed away without doing tshuva.
His head went into the Muslim.
Correct. His head went to Marsa Machpelah, but he did not do tshuva. To the point that what was the last thing he did in his life? What was his last thing? Everyone has a last event. What was his last event? Doing a sin. Protesting his brother's burial, delaying a funeral, a big isser, when in truth he knew that he had sold it to Yaakov, so he was both being dishonest, trying to steal, and delaying a funeral of Yaakov Avinu. That's how he died. Those were his last events of his life. So on the one hand, we find a greater spiritual common denominator between Yishmael and Avram than Yitzchak and Esav. Yitzchak, as we said, never did tshuva in the end, while Yishmael did. On the other hand, Mitzad Sheni, it says, Avram yotzav v'nifred menu Yishmael. The lashon is, the wording is in the pasuk and in Chazal, that Yishmael left from Avram, came out of Avram, which is meant to mean that Yishmael was not really considered part of Avram's descendants. Biologically, Avram was his father and he was his son. But spiritually, there was no connection between the two. And that's why Yishmael was never considered and is not considered a Jew. Even though he was born to Avram Avinu and Avram Avinu was Jewish, and certainly Sarah was Jewish, he was not considered Jewish. Right? I mean, his mother was Hagar, but he was not considered Jewish. And therefore, he wasn't considered an heir of Avram Avinu. He didn't inherit anything, and as Sarah asked Avram and received the permission from Hashem to kick him out of the house, as he will not be the heir of Avram's estate or Avram's spiritual lineage, spiritual legacy. On the other hand, with Esav, it says that Esav is considered a Yisrael Mumer. He's Jewish. He was a Jew. First, let's say the first part, Yisrael. Esav is considered Jewish. He was a Jew. Yishmael was not Jewish, while Esav was considered a Jew. So says the Gemara. Oh. So one of the big differences, of course, is the mother. Hagar was a Shivcha, the daughter of Parah from Mitzrayim. She wasn't Jewish, so her son, Yishmael, is not Jewish, while Rivka was a Jew, but this is not necessarily correct, because first, according to many Rishonim for Matan Torah, we went by the father, not by the mother. So it would make no difference who Yishmael's mother was. His father was Avram Avinu. Number two, do you really think Avram Avinu married a guy? A Goya? She converted. Hagar converted, and he converted everyone in his household. They all converted. Already in Charan he was converting people. Certainly in Eretz Yisrael. But nonetheless, the source that Yishmael is not Jewish is learned from a pasuk, of which it says, that only Yitzchak is your zera, only Yitzchak is your spiritual legacy, and not Yishmael. However, by Esav we don't find that. Esav is part of Yitzchak. Even though Yishmael did tshuva, and Esav didn't, Yishmael is not part of Avraham, while Esav is part of Yitzchak. He's considered what's called a renegade Jew, Yisrael Mumer, an apostate, a heretic, but a Jew. So that's the first connection we already find. That Yitzchak, for some, which we don't understand why, Esav, this Rasha, which was even a bigger Rasha than Yishmael in a certain respect, as we mentioned, remained with his Jewish title, while Yishmael did not. Meaning that Esav carries within him a connection to Yitzchak that Yishmael did not carry with Avram. Furthermore, we find in the Tana Devei, we find in the Targum of Yonis ben Uziel, as well as in the Zohar and other Midrashim, an inner connection, an interesting connection between Yitzchak and Esav. Chazal say the following. Right, so we know the Gemara in Sotah brings the whole story of what happened to at the time of the burial of Yaakov Avinu. Chushim ben Dan was standing there asking what's going on, what's the delay, and he was a bit deaf. He didn't really understand, but he understood that this guy, his wayward uncle, long-lost uncle, Esav, I can't imagine how happy he was to see him, was there making problems, so he took out a sword and chopped off his head. What the Gemara doesn't say is what adds Targum Yonasan and the Zohar is what happened to that head. The head rolled and rolled and rolled until it made it to the kever inside Maris HaMachpelah and landed right in the bosom, in the chest of Yitzchak. Reishe de Esav begu itfei de Yitzchak. The head of Esav rests within the bosom, within the chest of Yitzchak. And if we needed to have a strange and eerie conclusion, I don't think there's a greater one than this. Yitzchak merits to have a wayward child from birth, remains Jewish the whole time, doesn't get ousted from Judaism like did Yishmael, and his head gets buried with him, magically. It's very strange. Now the strange gets stranger. As we said before, Esav did not do tshuva. He died a Russia. He started off life a Russia and he died a Russia. He was a Russia throughout. The Gemara in Sanhedrin brings a following rule, which is recorded in the Shulchan Aruch in Yoreh Deah, chapter 362, which creates some of our traditional customs that Jewish people have in cemeteries and burying. In that, it's forbidden to bury a tzaddik next to a rasha or a rasha next to a tzaddik. Tzaddikim and rashaim cannot be near each other in burial. And the reason for this is explained in Maver Yablik, a 17th century sefer written by prime student of the Ramaz, Ramevi Punasari. The reason for this is because there really is an afterlife, and in the afterlife you hang out with your neighbors in the graveyard. No, not in the graveyard, but those who are your neighbors in the graveyard, you hang out with them. Sometimes it's literally in the graveyard, that's also true. But they're neighbors. And it says that the Malachim and different tzaddikim come to tzaddikim and learn with them Torah. And spiritually, if they have a rasha buried next to them, they don't want to tell secrets of Torah when you have this rasha here, right next door. And it's tremendously painful. The souls? Yeah. There's always a connection. I think we discussed this. Did we discuss this? No, maybe we didn't in this class. The body and the soul are similar, says the Zohar, to a husband and wife. And just like husband and wife is forever, as the Orach Chaim HaKadosh writes, even after 120, the souls of the husband and wife remain together upstairs in heaven and make a family there and have a home there, just like they have down here. So too, the body and soul. The body, even though we call it a pikadon and we call it a garment, it's not a garment that we just throw in the garbage when we're done. It's a garment that forever remains related to the soul. And that's why Tchias HaMesim, which is the culmination of all the work, the body and soul remarry each other. Okay. And that's why the soul waits for the body to be buried for it to move on with its continuous life. Because the soul, the body, is its other half. It's like its wife. This is the Zohar of last week, Parshas Toldos. So it says because of this, basically, that the souls are connected with the bodies forever, and in a single graveyard, everyone's hanging out with each other, and you can't bury a tzaddik next to a rasha or vice versa because this causes pain for the tzaddik. Causes pain for the rasha also. The rasha, all he's hearing all day is Gemara and learning. Think he wants that? Let's go to the beach. He wants to go to, And the Gemara doesn't leave it at that, but the Gemara continues and says a fascinating but frightening story. In Malachim, in Sefer Malachim, it says that Yeshaya, when Yeshaya Navi passed away, Isaiah, right, the prime student of Eliyahu Navi, when Yeshaya passed away, he was buried in a certain area, and it happened to be that in close proximity, time-wise, there was another individual who died or was killed, and there was a war going on with the Gentiles at that time, and they didn't have time to properly bury him, and they hastily basically threw him into the cave which Yeshaya Hanavi was buried in. And he also rolled and eventually hit the area of the feet of Yeshaya Hanavi. Sorry, not Yeshaya, Elisha. I'm sorry. Switch the names. Elisha, not Yeshaya. Elisha was the student of Eliyahu. So Elisha, this is what the pasuk says. Kam v'chayehu. He got up and he revived. The Radak on that pasuk explains the following. Elisha, the student of Eliyahu, got up out of his kever, told the dead man, "Get up and get out." Revived him.
Wow.
The guy got up, didn't understand what's going on, put his head back on his head. I added that part. He was dead. Elisha did Tchias HaMesim. He revived him, and says the Radak, the man went out, got married again, and had a number of children.
Oh.
Which man?
The man that was thrown in.
The bad neighbor.
Oh, the other guy, not Elisha.
Elisha
No.
didn't die again?
Elisha went back.
Went back to his grave.
Wow.
Yeah. An individual who wasn't on the level of Elisha was thrown into Elisha's grave because they had to do a hasty burial because they were running away. A Jew. Elisha revived him. He ended up having children, says the Radak, and says the Radak that his grandson ended up being a great Navi of this individual who was revived.
But the only reason he did it is because he didn't want him as a neighbor.
The Gemara says, why did this happen? Ein kavin rasha el tzaddik. You don't bury a rasha near a tzaddik.
Which Navi?
Elisha.
No, which Navi is
Malachim. Where's this mentioned?
No, it's
No, which Navi was the grand?
Oh, the Radak mentions the name. Not one of the famous ones. Not one of the Treyos, or not one of the famous Nevi'im. There were many Nevi'im back in the day, but he became a Navi and he contributed a lot to the Jewish people. However, the Gemara really doesn't take that approach. The Gemara in Sanhedrin says that this was a Navi Sheker. This person who was killed was not some, a nice Jew, but just didn't make it to the level of Elisha. He was a Navi Sheker. He was a false prophet. But nonetheless, no matter how you learn it, he wasn't on the level of Elisha. Elisha got up and threw him out. So we see that this is something very serious. Ad kedei kach. If someone buries a tzaddik next to a rasha or a rasha next to a tzaddik. Because of this, I'll reveal to you a great secret. This concept, this halacha, this Talmud, this story is the source for why throughout all the generations we have a concept called a Jewish cemetery. That is the sole reason. There is no place in Jewish literature that says have a Jewish cemetery. Nowhere. What's it based on? Well, we've had it for thousands of years. What's it based on? It's based on this. You can't bury a guy next to a yid. You can't bury a tzaddik next to a rasha. And that's why we're very careful to always bury a Jew in a Jewish cemetery. Even an apostate Jew in a Jewish cemetery.
How about Shabbat observers?
And within cemeteries itself, we have different sections for Shemer Shabbos and non-Shemer Shabbos. As if you bury someone who was Shemer Shabbos next to someone who's not Shemer Shabbos, What's going to be the discussions between these souls? What are they going to have in common?
Yeah, right. They're
So how many shluchim do you need? One shliach doesn't want another shliach in his kever. Put one shliach, one tzaddik with all the non-shemesh Shabbos, and that's it. You put two, they'll fight with each other, nothing will get done.
How does this work with families being buried together? Part of the family might not be worthy of the other.
Right. Yes, and we'd have to find in responses of Shilas and Shuvas throughout the generations, we find discussions of what to do with different types of apostates who passed away, and if they could be buried together with everyone else in the Jewish cemetery. And the answer is they cannot. They are buried in a Jewish cemetery. You're not allowed to bury them with a guy. It's forbidden. So a lot of these misconceptions, which have no source whatsoever, like if you have a tattoo, you're not buried in a Jewish cemetery, bunch of nonsense, it's not correct. But nonetheless, someone who married a shiksa, for example, or wasn't Shemesh Shabbos, we don't bury them in the regular part of the cemetery next to Yidden that are Shemesh Shabbos. Today, the truth is many do. I'm just saying, ideally, there's a concept called the Shemesh Shabbos area of the plot of the cemetery for this reason. In any event, so the question just boils up much stronger. How on earth did Yitzchak, one of the greatest tzaddikim that ever lived for Klal Yisrael, merit to have one of the biggest Rishayim's head buried with him? And we're in his chest, of all places. Of all places. How did Yitzchak not get up and get rid of it? Like Elisha. So something here is very strange that we're missing from the picture. I'll mention that even though that this idea that the head rolled is not recorded in the classical literature, the Gemara doesn't bring it, it's not brought in most Mefarshim. I said it's brought in Targum Yonasan and in the Zohar. But nonetheless, in Halacha we find a discussion whether Koyanim are allowed to visit Maras HaMachpelah. And in the halachic discussion back and forth amongst the Poskim, we find the Minchas Elazar, the Munkatcher Rebbe in the Tshuva, who writes that Koyanim may not enter Maras HaMachpelah, as even if you want to say that the others are all tzaddikim and tzaddikim don't give off tumah. Esav was no tzaddik. Esav's there. Esav was buried there. So how can a kohen go to Maras HaMachpelah? So he takes this medrash and he learns it literally. Ad lahalacha l'maisa. Practically, kohenim do go because it's after Herod built. You know, the way it was built is that you're not really in the actual ma'ara, you're not really in the actual cave. There's a whole bunch of caves under. But in the cave area itself, certainly a kohen would not be allowed to go. Because of the head of Esav. So how does this happen? Why did this happen? And we'll tip it off with one last question to make the mystery all the more mysterious. Yitzchak, who has a Russia child from birth, who murders, commits adultery, tries to kill Yaakov Avinu, destroy all the future of the Jewish people, of Yitzchak. This is the person who Yitzchak decided to give the blessings to, the brachas. Why did Yitzchak desire to bless Esav and not to bless Yaakov? Was he completely unaware of who Esav was? Did he not have any knowledge of Esav's evil ways? He did have knowledge. We know he did. We have textual proof of that and midrashic proof of that. So he did know who Esav was, and nonetheless, despite knowing who this man was, he wanted to basically give him the inheritance of the blessings. And we shouldn't think that these were just blessings of who's going to have good olive oil, who's going to have beautiful dates, who's going to have plenty of animals to graze. This wasn't just physical blessings. This was the blessings of the world to come. This was the blessings of the whole Yerusha of Avram Avinu. What was Yitzchak thinking? Why would he want to give it to a son like Esav, a rebellious son, who he knew about who he was, and give him over all the Yerusha, everything? The spiritual Yerusha, the physical inheritance, the spiritual inheritance. Why would he want to do such a thing? Let's read it we're going to read it in the Maimar of the Alter Rebbe, this question. Lahavin the ha Yitzchak Hivin Sho Esav, says the Alter Rebbe in Torah. Yitzchak certainly understood that this individual, that Esav is Esav, as we know Esav. How did Yitzchak hold Esav so high, so esteem in his eyes, such a high esteem in his eyes? At times the verse states that Yitzchak knew that Esav had tzayid b'piv, which is talking about that he knew how to hunt, and also and he knew how to trick him with different questions. And when it says that Yaakov came to get the blessings and he mentioned God's name, he said, this is the voice of Yaakov. He knew that Esav does not mention the name of God. So the question is, says the Alter Rebbe, what was Yitzchak Avinu thinking in giving him the brachas? So the beginning of the explanation of this is based on a Zohar, which states the following in typical Zoharic words. The concept is as follows. Kine Esav susfisa didahaba. Esav is the waste of the gold. Soilis hagvuras de Yitzchak, the waste of the severities of Yitzchak. Shubechinas mailas hazav ala kesef, which is the advantage of gold over silver. Mapsayda shalai yatsa Esav. The Reisha de Esav batufa de Yitzchak, and the head of Esav is hugged, is grasped within the bosom of Yitzchak. This is the Zohar. Very cryptic words. What on earth does this mean? So to begin to understand this, we're going to start going on a very deep Kabbalistic exploration in different Svarim of who exactly were these people. Who was Yitzchak? If Yitzchak had a child like Esau, well, who really was Yitzchak? Who was Rivka? Who was Sarah? And who was Yaakov and Esau? Who were they really representing? Who are these people? Megala Amukas of Nosson Shapiro from Krakow in the 1600s explains the following. Esav hayatipa rishayna shel Yitzchak sig zahav. Esav was born from the first drop of seed of Yitzchak, which is, as we mentioned before from the Zohar, the waste of the gold. V'chein yatzer rishayna, therefore he came first. Kadei shia admayni. Loimin aroi v'nechilus rishon yatzer achan al zatir zakas yatzer rishon lama aleihu rishon bezera v'roi li yis achan v'yatzer rishon admayni shu hay roi li yis tikunin shel adam rishon l'zeh chashav kadei shia admayni shel guli david. Sounds like this. The birth of Esav, which was the first seed of Yitzchak, which as we're saying is the waste of the gold, is meant to be a tikkun for Adam Harishon. How do we get Adam Harishon into this whole mess? Let's see. We know how we got into the mess, right? Adam had the sin, but how did we enter him now into this whole thing? He continues the Megala Mukus. The brothers were fighting already in the stomach. Yedua, it's known that Rivka was the representation of Chava. Her mission in this world was to fix the ruach, the level of so-called ruach of Chava. While Yitzchak was coming to fix the ruach, the level of ruach, the spirit of Adam Harishon. So Rivka is representing Chava, Yitzchak is representing Adam, and as he says later on, this is a type of Gilgal. Adam Harishon's a certain level of his neshama is nisgalgal, reincarnated into Yitzchak, while the neshama of Chava is reincarnated into Rivka. We're going to get to it coming up.
Doesn't it say that Yaakov was conceived first because that's what God said to him?
Chiluke Midrashim. Different Midrashim. While what Rashi presents us in the Parsha is, as we say, great stuff, but we have to be aware that it's not always encompassing. There are also sometimes other approaches, other opinions in the Farshim. So many hold that Esav was the first, as we just read. So he continues. We're creating here the page, the spiritual lineage page of the neshamis of Yitzchak, Rivka, Esav. We're going to get to Sarah and Avram soon. It's going to be interesting. It says like this. Kol chayelida meitzadas tevera. Sorry, K'moshe Chava hoisa aim kol chayelida meitzadas tevera hevel mesitu t'ay v'kain mesitu l'ra. Ken Rivka rasa shreish shnebanu yishayim chazru ba'olai. So Yitzchak needs to fix Adam, and for that he receives part of the soul of Adam. Rivka needs to fix Chava, and for that she receives part of the soul of Chava. And they know now that they're going to have two children who are representing the two children of Adam and Chava that were born by proximity of Chet Tzadas, which was Cain and Hevel. Hevel was from the good side, the goody-goody, Yaakov Avinu. And Cain, Sitra Dera, Esav. Rivka saw that these two children were now returning to the world in none other than her womb. As Amra Imkain Lama Za'anaychi. She then went over to Shem and Aver, and Avram was read in Sefer HaYashar, and she asked them, why me? Why? I don't want to give birth to Cain. I don't want to have these two people in me and have a Russia like Cain and Russia like Esav come out. What do you mean? You're trying to do a tikkun. This is for a purpose of a tikkun. What's wrong? So Megala Mukus, as its name is, revealing, that's the name of the Sefer, Megala Mukus, revealing the depth, reveals to us the story of what happened here. In Parshas Toldos, we discussed the shidduch of Yitzchak and Rivka, and how Rivka was riding on the camel, and then she asked, who's that handsome-looking man over there? Oh, that is my master, that's your future husband, and she falls from the camel. Says Megala Mukus, the falling of the camel had some spiritual significance. Rivka, to begin with, already had envisioned that this may happen. That they're on this mission here to fix Chava, Adam and Chava, and that there was a Cain involved here. But we don't want to have Cain. When she fell off the camel, which as we know, a camel has siman tara, a siman tuma, it has two simanim. It has a kosher siman and has a non-kosher siman. It doesn't have split hooves, but it chews its cud. So that she understood from that, riding on the camel when she met Yitzchak, that she would have a child, one who is kosher and one who's not kosher. And when she saw Yitzchak, Ra'a or Gan Eden Ima, she saw the light of Gan Eden with him, and she envisioned that in the end Tumah would come out from him. When she saw all this, she fell from the camel in shock. V'naflu b'suleiseha, and she lost her virginity, which is called in halacha mukas eitz. V'chashvai, and she thought that this means, this event that just happened, that her basulim were broken, shavur nefilas basuleha yechashav l'makam nefel ki'ilu nis'abru v'hipila, that this loss of blood that she just had in an unnatural way is representing the birth and loss of that klipa that was supposed to come out, representing Cain, and she's therefore saved from having Esav. Vim Cain, so she was convinced that she only has one child, not two. So when she discovered she has two, she told Shem Ve'ever, Lama zeh anechi. How can this be? How can I be carrying Beis Banim Arishonim of Chava? How can I be carrying the two children of Chava if I already fixed him? But she didn't. Megalamukas goes on also to explain that there was also Avraham and Sarah were involved in this. He says the following: Sarah had retained the neshama of Chava, a level of the neshama of Chava, and she handed part of that to Yitzchak. It's a little deep, so try to follow. Avraham and Sarah are already trying to fix the sin of Adam and Chava by retaining part of their neshamas, referring to Chava. Referring to Sarah. She retains part of Chava's neshama. And the pasuk says, when she gave birth, it says that this is a son. Yitzchak was a son born to Rivka. Why not Avraham? As Yitzchak and Sarah were connected, the neshamas were connected. And that's why it's brought down in the Zohar that initially Yitzchak had a feminine soul. That's why did Avram wait so long? Waited till age 37 to marry him off. So Rivka wasn't ready. But also he couldn't have children yet. He had a feminine soul. Only by Akedas Yitzchak, when Sarah died, was Yitzchak's soul switched for, was Yitzchak's soul received a masculine soul, a dachar. And he was able to get married. What was that masculine soul that he received? Says Magal Mukas, that was the neshama of Adam Avish. So again, it went like this. Sarah, who contains the neshama of Chava, gives birth to Yitzchak, which is connected to the neshama of Chava. Sarah passes away. Yitzchak, who no longer needs that connection in this world, receives the neshama of Adam, and the neshama of Chava, which was in Sarah, goes to Rivka, and then they marry. It's a strange story. And she has Cain and Hevel. She has the new Cain and Hevel, the new version of Cain and Hevel, which is Yaakov and Esav. Why are we bringing Cain back down? What does he deserve to come back for? So now we're going to begin explaining in the Sikha of what exactly this head of Esav represented. Let me read inside. Rish'aseh shel Esav hi mitzad gufay. It's true that Esav was a Rasha, but only from the aspect of his body. Ach mitzad Reishe, however, from his head, kasher Reishe menutak min haguf, when his head is not connected to his body, he's not such a big Rasha anymore. Mufrad min amatzias hanamucha. Ein hu Rasha. Lehepech yesh lekesher Yitzchak, and on the contrary, he has a connection with Yitzchak. L'chein nishar reisha begula itfei de Yitzchak, and that's the reason why, even at the last moments of life, Yitzchak and Esav don't separate. Esav's head is hugged onto by the body of Yitzchak. Remember we said it rolled?
Yaakov.
No. It rolled into Yitzchak. It rolled into Yitzchak's chest. And by the way, this has a halachic ramification, what we're saying here. What we just read right now has a halachic ramification, because some place can say, you're right that Esav's head rolled into Ma'aseh Machpelah, but it says Rishayim. After a certain amount of years, everything disappears. There's nothing left. There's no tomb anymore. Everything's gone. But if we hold now that the head of Esav was Kaddish, was a tzaddik, there's no problem. Kainim can't go, even though it's been thousands of years. The upper part of Esav, as is the root of Esav, is holy. While the head is connected to the body, meaning at the lowest state down here, who yatzav from Yitzchak, then there is no connection. That's where Esav is evil, and that's where Esav is separated from Yitzchak. It has no connection with the light of holiness, and that's why down here Esav did not do tshuva. And that's why the klipa of Esav is even worse than the klipa of Yishmael. Yishmael did tshuva while Esav did not do tshuva. As down here, when the head was connected to the body, the kedusha of the head was subordinate to the klipa of the body, and therefore Esav was a rasha. But within Esav is included the head, which represents a certain level of kedusha. What does this mean? So the Alter Rebbe explains in Torah R, in a few different parashas, that Esav, similar to Cain, carried within him the holy sparks of the world of Tohu. He contained within him tremendous sparks of holiness, tremendous sparks of Kedusha, within his evil state. And this treasure chest of very sublime and holy divine light can only come in a very darkened garment, in a very evil garment. That's the only way that they'll agree. The only way that Klippa will agree to allow the Kedusha of this high level to come in is if it garbs it. That's the idea brought down in the Arizal, that sometimes parents who are Rishayim and have a Rasha child, that child can end up being a great tzaddik. That sometimes Rishayim can draw down neshamas of a tzaddik, as the Klippas will agree to have the neshamas of a tzaddik brought into them for the sake of taking a little, what's called a challenge of an investment, taking a risk of an investment. Perhaps we'll be able to nurture and convince this neshama to go in the bad ways, and then we'll be able to nurture from his holiness, from more klipa. But maybe he'll win. It's a risk. Like any investment, it's a risk. So this is a risk that was taken within Esav. Esav, mitzad is guf. Mitzad is, from the aspect of his external state, was already born to do evil, born to be wild.
Right.
But within him, he contained these sparks of very sublime levels of holiness. Reishe de Esav, the head of Esav, was holy. And it was Yitzchak's job, not Avram Avinu, and not Yaakov Avinu, but Yitzchak, he had the special personality to be able to have such a child and be able to dig it out. Meaning that it was to begin with decided that a child who is Esav, a Rasha, will be born. And Yitzchak will have such a child not because he did any sin, not because Yitzchak did an Aveira and therefore he was punished with having an evil child. But Yitzchak contains a certain skill which we will elaborate on in a moment. And Esav contains certain gems, meaning the Rasha contains certain gems that the Tzaddik doesn't have, that Yaakov doesn't have. And this is a perfect match. Place the area with the gems with the person who knows how to find them, which is Yitzchak. The Avodah of Yitzchak, it says, was to dig wells. The idea of digging wells is you dig that deep down into the earth, worthless earth. You're going through what we can call waste until you finally get to water. Avram Avinu tried, what does it say? It got stopped up. Avram Avinu tried the digging, couldn't find the gems, couldn't keep them. Yitzchak had a special quality of Avodah that he's able to dig in and bring out the gems of Kedusha, the gems of holiness. And that's why Hashem predestined that specifically Yitzchak would have a person like Esav. And we should never look at Esav as a person who was, just a Rasha and, terrible, doesn't deserve to live. No. There's a special mission in Esav that he was created for this mission. Down here he had a tremendously challenging life. He was already predestined and already born with an intuition of evil, of murder, that he didn't control. But within all that, he contained Reishe de Esav, the Kedusha, the sublime sparks that even Yaakov didn't have. And Yitzchak's job was to dig. Now it seems like that Yitzchak failed. It seems like he failed. Esav did not do tshuva. Esav lived a Rasha and died a Rasha. And here is where we see that we can't always judge a life by the time he spent in this world. You see, Esav had a number of descendants. And from amongst Esav's eventual descendants came people who converted to Judaism and became of the greatest leaders of Yiddishkeit. Can anyone mention any of them? Rabbi Akiva is not listed within those of Esav. Actually, Rabbi Akiva came from Sisra. So, Onkelos. Onkelos was the grandson of Titus. Onkelos was a Ger. Titus was from Esav. Onkelos became a Ger. Onkelos, the Shlach Kodesh explained, and this is why we read Onkelos for Shnai Mikra every year of Shabbos, represents the finding of those jewels, of those gems hidden within Esav and bringing them out to the light. And the reading of Shnai Mikra, then reading Targum Onkelos every year of Shabbos has the power of doing this exact job of Yitzchak, of digging into the earth and removing those holy sparks that's found only within evil. Also within Kedusha you have sparks, but this quality of sparks, of holiness, was hidden specifically in evil. The Chesed Avram, Rav Avram Azulay, the famous Kabbalist from Hebron, writes that Esav and Yaakov met each other much later down the line, but this time in a much more peaceful state. Yaakov Avinu was reincarnated into Rabbi Yehuda Anasi, while Esav was reincarnated into Antoninus, the Caesar who was the son of Titus. Some historical question on that, but there was an Antoninus, the son of Titus, in close proximity to the time of Yehuda Anasi. If you know the history, the Gemara, Shas, the Talmud is filled with different stories of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi and Antoninus. Antoninus was the Roman emperor, the Roman Caesar, while Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was the leader of Jewry. And they had a very close relationship. They learned Torah together all the time. There's many discussions recorded in the Talmud between the two about philosophical, halachic. And as the Medrash writes, there's two versions, but one version is that Antoninus eventually converted and became a Jew, became a Yid. But one thing's clear, he learned Torah and he had the most tremendous respect for Yehuda Nasi. The Gemara brings that he would serve, he was Meshamish Yehuda Nasi. He would, when Yehuda Nasi would want to go on his bed, he would say Please let me crawl on my hands so you can use me as a stepping stool to go into your bed. Says the Chesed Avram, this is hinted to in the name of Yehuda Nasi, as Nasi's Rashi Tevis Nitzutz Shel Yaakov Avinu. Nitzutz Shel Yaakov Avinu. Reb Sadrigain explains that when Shem ve'Aver told her, she said, Lama za anoichi, why do I have to suffer? I thought I fixed Kayin, I thought I fixed this already. Why do I have to have two? The Bein Sadrigain says that when she was told, Shnei goyim bebitnech, you're going to have two nations, what was consoling about that? That you're going to have one nation who's going to try to kill the other nation? How consoling is that to you? Not only are you having twins that are driving you crazy right now, but by the way, they're going to try to kill each other when they're older throughout all generations. That's not consoling. Says Reb Sadrigain, Shem ve'Aver and Avram Avinu told her, it's true there's going to be some friction between these brothers now and later on, but in the long run there's going to be some gems taken out of here. As Rebbe and Antoninus are already represented here in Yaakov Mesa. L'nachim Mesa, to comfort her, l'dabra liba, and to appease her that she desired this pregnancy. Sha'afilu Esav shu Rashas, even Esav who's a Rasha, Yetzi mimenu, Antoninus can come out of him. The Lama Yatzmenu Antoninus Mereishe, Hanitzat Shaya me Esav Shalokach me Yitzchak u'merivku misham Antoninus priya klipa v'nishma. As Esav contains within him holy sparks of Kedusha, which are able to be extracted, if not immediately in the time of Yitzchak, eventually. By Yitzchak grabbing and holding on to the head of Esav, it's representing that the klipa, the guf of Esav, can be left out of the Aros HaMachpelah. It has no refinement. But the Kedusha needs to be refined. And the Kedusha is a tzaddik. And based on this, we can also understand in the next part of the story why Yitzchak so badly wanted to give everything, all the blessings, all of the inheritance, specifically to the Rasha, to Esav, and not to his good child, Yaakov Avinu. The intent of Yitzchak was, how do we dig out these sparks from my son? How do we fix Cain? How do we fix Esav? The blessings, even though they sound as physical blessings of prosperity, good land, good milk, all the good life, in truth they represent spiritual blessings. They represent blessings of Torah Shebechsav and Torah Shebal Peh. And Alter Rebbe writes that Yitzchak desired to give Esav the present, the blessings and the inheritance of the written and oral Torah. For the sake of him having this tremendously high and sublime divine light revealed when he performs Torah and mitzvahs, that can then be able to refine his high sparks. That this can then extract his high sparks. In other words, Yitzchak saw it's been already a lot of years. Esav's still Esav. You got to try something new. Yaakov's already a good kid. He doesn't need my money. He doesn't need my blessings. He doesn't need the Torah and mitzvahs. He doesn't need that power. What does it mean? Yaakov already fulfilled Torah and mitzvahs. But who's going to receive that koyach that when you fulfill a mitzvah, you draw likus down to the world? That you draw the infinite light of God below. The others didn't have that before Matan Torah. Only Matan Torah gave us that power. Yitzchak wanted to give it to Esav. He said Esav needs it. Esav has these hidden, sublime, divine levels of holiness that can only be extracted with this high divine light. Based on all this, as the Rebbe can understand why a great portion of this parsha discusses the blessings of Yitzchak, as the theme of this parsha is Toldos, the children of Yitzchak, who is the main one, as we said to begin with, Esav. Yitzchak wanted to bless him despite knowing exactly who he was. Yitzchak was no fool. Because he knew Shetzayid Bepiv, he knew that Esav has game in his mouth. What's game? It's referring to those divine sparks. Bereishet Esav, in the head of Esav he has the Kedusha. He has very high sparks, like like the Neshamas Uncle Sager, and we forgot to mention one more, Rabbi Meir Balanes. The Kivan Sha'avedas Yitzchak u'Chafiras Be'eris, and since the service of Yitzchak, as I said before, to dig under, to take a challenge of a damaged child and find how to extract the good within him, Kefisha Super Kaidim Parsha. The Ficha Chatze Yitzchak B'Emtzos Berchais of Leisa. Therefore, Yitzchak wanted to do a blessing trick through his blessings to be able to dig and extract and reveal the living waters, the holy sparks of Kedusha found within the head of Esav. Yitzchak thought that this would work. However, in truth, this wouldn't be able to work. Esav was already too distant and too far for the Kedusha to be able to react to this great divine light that can be revealed from Torah and Mitzvahs. He wasn't a vessel for the blessings. And therefore, instead, Hashem arranged, and Rivka arranged, that the blessings be given to Yaakov Avinu. As Yaakov received, he inherited from Yitzchak the task of digging into Esav and getting those sparks out. So that task was then given over to Yaakov. That's what the blessings represent.
So Esav couldn't see that he couldn't do it?
Esav was blinded. Esav didn't know what he had in him. Neither, you mean Yitzchak couldn't see? Yeah, also Yitzchak couldn't see. Yitzchak overrated Esav's level. He thought Esav was at least on a level that he wants to work on himself. He wants to work on himself. So I can give him the brachas. L'mashal, a father has a child who's Rahman al-San struggling with tremendous drug addiction of many years. His child wants to work on himself. He's going to give his child all the money so he can go to rehabilitation, and he'll support him and his family so he can get help. A child that wants to work on himself truthfully, then yes, what won't a parent do for a child? But if you overestimate the child's desire, and instead the child takes the money and uses it to continue his fiend and habit, then we've accomplished nothing and just exaggerated the problem even more, exacerbated the problem. And this was the debate that was happening between Yitzchak and Yaakov. Yitzchak felt that Esav is a big Rasha. He has some big challenges, which it's not his fault. He was born that way with these challenges. But he wants to work on himself. And he's able to work on himself if he's given the proper tools. So we're going to give him the blessings. Yaakov knew that you don't give money to a drug addict. You give money to a drug addict under the premises, oh, I'm helping him out. You're helping him continue his addiction. So Yaakov connivingly, against his nature, Yaakov Ishtam, he had to do his whole trick. Came in against his nature and received the blessings, received these powers. I understand, but who had to be the one to play the game?
Yeah, who saw it?
Who saw what?
Who saw that it couldn't be Esav, that it had to be Yaakov?
Right. Spiritually, Yaakov also understood this. Rivka understood it. Yaakov understood it. Rivka explained to Yaakov. And Yaakov went in and took it because only through him can come the refinement.
Did they fix the problem of Cain and Hevel?
So that's a good question. Did we fix Cain and Hevel? Did we fix Adam and Chava? Did we fix Esav? And that's what we're still doing here. It's a long journey. It's not a one-day process. Yitzchak tried to do it the easy way, but there wasn't no easy way. It takes a long time. It's a long process, and throughout all the generations, we're going through refinement. Refinement of Esav. The conclusion, culmination of this refinement will be in Yemei Mashiach, where all of the Goyim, including Bnei Esav, will be around. They'll be alive also after Tchias and Esav, and then the refinement will take place, and they'll have that refinement take place. The Rebbe learns out the following lesson from this Sikha. I think we can take out a lot of different things from this for our lives. Hayrami Kala Amr, the divine lesson from all the above is as follows. Ba'efan Pashat Aleinu, in very simple terms for us. Im la'esav ha'rash shayilifnei matan Torah. If Esav the Rosh who lived before the giving of the Torah, meaning he wasn't technically obligated in being observant.
But yeah, just said it's just this way, no, it wasn't on the river.
Yeah, that's correct. We'll let him off for Nimrod. No. We'll let
And
him off.
also for July Rose,
I agree with you, okay. Nitan Atayar Yisrael Pneishu B'nai Yitzchak. He was given the status of a Jew because he was a son of Yitzchak. In other words, that once Yitzchak, the Rebbe explained the Sikh, we skipped this part, but in that Sikh he explains that starting from Yitzchak, everyone's Jewish. A Jew is a Jew. Not from Avram, we said before that Yishmael was thrown out, but starting from Yitzchak, we brought from the Pasuk, even Esav is part of the Zerah of Yitzchak, but he's not the main Zerah of Yitzchak, in terms of the Yerusha of the Torah. But he's considered a Jew. We said he's a Jewish mummer, but he's a Jew. So if even Esav was born before Matan Torah, when there was really no obligation giving Torah, nonetheless being the son of Yitzchak, he's considered a Yisrael, a Jew. And Yitzchak, what did Yitzchak do? Yitzchak never threw him out of the house. Yitzchak never said, this kid was born to be bad, let's just get rid of him. He had him stay. He dedicated his life to do the destined mission that Hashem decided for him, which was to dig and dig and dig into Esav and try to get the good. So if Yitzchak tried to dig within him and reveal the hidden goodness, and all the more so, certainly by Jews after Matan Torah, who are now we're full-fledged Jews. We are all halachic Jews. Every single Jew, no matter what his religious and observant state is, contains within him that spark of God, of I am Hashem. And certainly the non-observant Jews of today are much higher than the level of Esav. They don't act like Esav. But certain, if you add to that most of them are in the status and category of a Tinik Shenishba, which is someone who's not really considered a heretic. They were born into a heretical way of thinking. They didn't do this on their own. Therefore, certainly every single person must dedicate themselves and hand themselves over towards bringing other Yidden closer to Yiddishkeit. Even those who are very distant and do some terrible things against Judaism. So a person has to dig and reveal the living waters that's established and found within every single Jew. How is this done? How do we do this? Be like Yitzchak. Yitzchak throughout his life. I think Yitzchak didn't go through those deliberations. How can I allow this son bringing his Avodah Zarah wives to my house? Look what he's doing. Let's throw him out. Let's get rid of him. Yitzchak his whole life decided we're not looking at Esav the way he is now. We're looking at Esav in truth of what in truth is found within him. His Pnimius. Reisha de Esav. Esav's head, which can be refined and eventually was refined and will be refined. But also when a Jew looks at other Yidden in this way, that he looks at the goodness contained within them, and then when you look at the Pnimius, the inner part, you don't notice, you don't pay attention, you don't focus on the external state of their irreligiosity. And when you look at a Jew in that state, you're able to deal with him and be makar of him in a much more willing and joyful manner and have influence on him. And so this is no novelty for us today of the idea of shlichus. We just concluded the convention of the shluchim, of the idea of how the Rebbe changed the outlook of how we look at irreligious Jews. Today when we think that, we just look at them as good Yidden who are under were born to a bad influence due to no fault of their own, and we have to be makar of them, is a real novelty that the Rebbe infiltrated into Judaism today.
עשיו תינוק שנשבע מהעולמות למעלה, לא מהבית שלו.
What's that?
He came from a Jewish home.
No, we didn't say Yitzchak is a Tinnik Shenishba. We didn't say Esav is a Tinnik Shenishba. We said on the contrary, if even Esav, who was no Tinnik Shenishba, nonetheless, Yitzchak, we saw his dedication to refine him, so certainly Jews who are Tinnik Shenishba. So there's a few points here. Point number one is...
He didn't have free choice.
Esav?
Yeah.
He had a tremendous challenge. He had free choice, but it was a big challenge. It wasn't our free choice. It wasn't the same for us.
So he could have chose, he could have overcome his difficulties and chosen groups.
Simply saying, every single person is born with freedom of choice, and there's no such thing, even a guy being born without freedom of choice of going against Shavin's B'nai Noach. So you had to say he had freedom of choice, but he had a tremendous challenge. Similar to what we explained in previous class regarding David HaMelech. David HaMelech had freedom of choice with Bathsheba, but the challenge was so great, it's as if he didn't. It's almost as if he didn't. In other words, in the freedom of choice, you have different qualities. You can't compare the freedom of choice you have for not eating a fly that's on the table that just died to the freedom of choice of not eating a delicious ice cream when you're flashing. You can't compare those two freedom of choices. Right? So too, you can't compare the freedom of choice of someone who abstains from sinning in a matter that he has an unbreakable and tremendous challenge of a passion for, to someone who is more cold-natured and doesn't have such a passion. Most of us don't really have such a freedom of choice and not to murder. I hope not. Okay? Most of us don't murder, and it's not so hard not to murder. It's not such a big challenge. But you have some people, mafianeers as you call them, it's very hard for them not to kill. They have a tremendous challenge. They're able to. They have a lust. Or to steal. So everybody has different challenges. So there's different qualitative levels of freedom of choice. And Esav, in this regard, had the minimal freedom of choice he had was, as I said before, tremendously pounced against by his finan and passion desire being born with Cain. Let's not forget who his neshama was, a murderer, the first murderer in history. To speak about bad educators, this was who he was. This is who he came from. So the first thing is to understand is how this sikha is really coming to be the showcase of the change of perspective of how Yidden have to look at other Yidden that are non-observant. And while this hasn't reached all Jewry yet, you still have pockets. So let's do it historically. Historically, in the 1950s, most of Jewry looked at unobservant Jews and non-religious Jews as Erev Rav, Apikarsim, separate yourselves from them, don't have anything to do with them, segregate from them. That's how it was viewed. And when slowly we began coming out with doing shlichus and going out to be makar of them, many opposed it. It was a 1,000-page sefer written with the askamas of all the Gedolei Harabanim in the 60s by someone from Williamsburg, of all the terrible atrocities being done. Didn't officially say Lubavitch, but it was understood what they were coming to attack. Of these mitzvah tanks and putting on tefillin and doing all these terrible averos, putting on tefillin with a non-religious Jew who eats chazir and does all the sins, and you defiling the tefillin, putting on tefillin with him, with sources. This was a tremendous campaign. It was a completely different way of thinking before the Rebbe came out with this idea. And slowly, the Jewish world began maturing its perspective. And most of the Jewish world today, I think we can say, has this perspective of where we don't look at an unobservant Jew in the same light as our forefathers, our ancestors would look at a non-religious Jew in the shtetl. He would be completely ostracized, completely finished. You said shiva for him. Unfortunately, it hasn't reached all segments of Jewry. You still have unfortunately some pockets of Jewry today that still have the old perspective, and they believe that if someone leaves the derech, automatically you have to enact with them small deicha, push them away, don't have anything to do with them. But God willing, it's growing, and most people are beginning to see it differently. But furthermore, it's not just with regards to non-religious Jews. We can attach this lesson to many different situations, with family members, with children. Even amongst observant, there's different levels of religiosity. When we have a child who's having more challenges than another child, or a family member having more challenges than a family member, then this sikha, this idea that we just learned, can always be highlighted in our minds to understand different people are born with different challenges, and some have, as we said before, a very, very minimal qualitative, a minimal quality of freedom of choice, but they contain Reishe de Esav. They contain some very high hidden divine sparks. And we have to use, just like Yitzchak, Yemin Mekareves, we have to use the right arm to do whatever we can to bring them closer. And as the Rebbe wrote here in the Sikha, to look at and focus on that goodness that's contained within them. And even if it doesn't come right away, we're going to say, okay, I'm going to do this Shita for 1 year. 1 year Yemin Mekareves, 1 year pass. Small deicha. Yitzchak did it till he passed away. Even after Yitzchak passed away, the head came and rolled into his arms. As you never know what can come out of this child, even if during his lifetime he didn't live a proper life. I'll conclude with a Maisa, a story that happened, I believe, the 1200s in Paris, in France. There was a Jew who was born to a regular Jewish family, observant. That's the only thing that existed. There was no non-observant back then. Everyone was observant. And this child, as he grew up, he halach midechi el dechi, went from one level to another level of going off the path of observing Torah and mitzvahs, until eventually it came to the point that he became a heretic, an apostate. He converted to Christianity. Converted to Christianity, married a Gentile woman, had Gentile children, and became a rising star in the church, and began receiving different governmental powers. And he was always a big antagonist towards religion and towards times the Rishonim in France. And there came a time that there was a certain decree, a certain edict that was going to be very terrible for the Jews. I don't recall right now the specifics of it, of what it was, that they wanted to put out. And it was sitting on his table. Now, it wasn't a matter of him signing or not signing. He was obligated to implement it. It was given from a higher order. He had to implement it on the Jewish people of France. And he knew that if he refused to implement it, it would be capital punishment. But nonetheless, he created a whole underground movement to counteract this edict that was going to be made. And he did this for a number of years, until eventually became discovered, and he was burnt at the stake by the church. He was killed. The Rishonim at that time came out and said you have to give him a Jewish burial and bury him like a tzaddik. They said that this individual, you see, we looked at him all the years, he was the greatest traitor to Jewry. The greatest traitor. His father sat shiva on him. But Hashem put him in a position to save all these Yidden. And he could have only reached it if he left. Now, that doesn't mean he had the right to leave. He had freedom of choice to leave. But nonetheless, there was a certain challenge and a certain destiny that was pre-decided for this individual. And for the purpose of placing him in that influential position. And this is the lesson that we learn from Yitzchak, that a person can't just judge by what his eyes see right now, by a family member, a child, a friend. A person should know a Jew is always holy and contains tremendous potential within them. It's the end of tonight's Sikha.
אפשר גם, אני מדבר בעברית, זה בסדר.
זה בסדר.
אפשר גם להבין מהשיעור שאפשר לסיים תיקון אחרי המוות.
בהחלט. She asked if she can understand from the class that a tikkun can be finished after death. And the answer is absolutely. A tikkun can be finished through a person's children. There's many things a person leaves in this world, even after they pass away. They can bring a tikkun, sure.
לא על ידי אחרים.
Oh, that's why you usually have a gilgul. You have reincarnation. Yesh gilgulim. Reincarnation comes back usually for tikkun, but also a child can do it, yeah.